Every person I love is in this room. All my best friends, my husband, my sister-in-law, so, and all the friends, and my publisher, and my agent. So I know you love me. And Patty.
Okay, so now we're going to start talking.
Yep.
So, you know, when I first saw that clip of the detective story, I saw that play, believe it or not. I saw it when I first came to New York, when my father had to leave California. And I saw you in the play. And by the way, she was the hottest actress. She still is the hottest actress. But she was the hottest actress in New York in 1949?
52.
50?
No,
50.
50. 50.
She was remarkable in that play. Everybody wanted to see it. Well, it was a great season in New York, too, you know.
Yeah.
The golden age of
It was Tennessee
streetcar.
Williams. It was Arthur Miller.
And didn't you, by the way, at that time, sort of, you went out with Brando once, didn't you?
Patty. Gossip.
Shall I make it serious? No. But did you go on his motorcycle?
Yes, I went on his motorcycle. We went out on a date together. We had one date, and he took me to a small kind of nightclub. Right. That had a young woman who had no clothes on, and a big snake. And the whole act was this big, like a boa constrictor. She was fondling it, and Marlon and I both sat there on this little banquette and never looked at each other. We looked at the girl with the snake.
Okay.
And then he took me home on his motorcycle, and that was it.
Really? Oh,
not a word.
Okay. End of story.
Yep.
But back to the detective story. That was really your first big break in the theater.
Oh yeah, it was my first play.
And didn't Henry Fonda have something to do with that?
Henry Fonda saw me in a talent show, and he recommended to Sidney Kingsley, who is both the writer and the director of Detective Story, that he use me in the play. And so Sidney wanted me to read for the ingenue. And the ingenue had lines like, when the detective asks her about her boyfriend and says, "What color are your eyes?" And the guy says, "Brown." She says, "Brown and green flecked with gold." And I couldn't say it without laughing. And so I said, "Well, can I read the part of the old lady, the shoplifter?"
She was old originally.
She was 40. And so, and to me that was old. I was like 22, 21.
But you didn't play her 42, did you?
No,
later,
but she was written, it says about 40 in parentheses.
I see.
Yeah.
But before that, Sandy Meisner comes into it in some way. I mean, you'd been studying with him, and he was like your mentor, really, wasn't he? Or one of your
Sandy Meisner, like Sidney Kingsley, came from the group theater. The group theater changed acting not only for Broadway and New York, but for the world. There's no great British actor who isn't using the method now. But the method came from Stanislavski, from Russia. And so the group theater was a very radical theater. Clifford Odets, they did all the things about the working class, awakening about the unions, and that whole union beginnings of protecting like the actors. The actors never had a union before. Actors' Equity, and they could work actors on Broadway every hour that they want, 30 hours a day, no weekends. And so the group theater was the beginning of the labor movement, and it was also connected to communism, because that's where Stanislavski, the Russian teacher, had come from. So that the whole pressure on the theater, when it became the McCarthy period, came out of the group theater's adoption of the method. And when I went to the neighborhood playhouse, Sandy Meisner was the head of it, and he was the one who was teaching at that time. And it was, for me, I was 17. For me, it was the first focus of any kind, of what acting was, what an objective was, what what entering myself was, what entering a character, the idea of having an objective for the play, for my life. And I was very badly educated. You know, I'd been thrown out of one high school, I went to 2 others. I barely got out of high school, so that my education came
partly with Sandy.
With the neighborhood playhouse and Sandy Meisner. That was the beginning of my education.
Well, I just wanted to ask you that because I remember you told me once that he commented when you first came into class that you acted spoiled.
Yeah. Yes. Well, he gave me an objective to find something.
Right.
And this was the first exercise that they gave you at the neighborhood playhouse, to find something. And I looked for it, and I couldn't find it, and I said, I can't find it. And he said, you're spoiled. And it was like, for the first time, somebody said something to me where I saw what they saw. They saw a spoiled girl. And I accepted, and I loved that he could see that.
And he also commented on your voice. You spoke in a very
high voice. Well,
and how did that come about? I mean, why did you speak the way you spoke when you first?
Like I do now.
No,
with laryngitis.
No.
Well, my mother and my aunt spoke in very high voices like this. Like, Dolly, where are you going today? I don't know. I may go to the theater. I may go to the movies. I don't know. And so, having no other example in front of me, I had that little high voice too. I want to be an actress.
And he commented on that, or you didn't know?
Actually, they recorded everybody who came into class when you went into speech class, into voice class. And I just didn't recognize my voice. I said, yes, I want to be an actress. And I thought, who is that? And it was me and this wonderful, wonderful teacher, Mary Van Dyke. Was the teacher at the neighborhood playhouse. And eventually she pushed that voice down into a chest voice, which I'd never even explored. And this was after a session at, what's the music college?
Manus? Juilliard?
Juilliard. All my friends are in the audience. They know it more than I do. And at Juilliard, I'd come in with that little high voice too. And I had all the songs in that little high voice. My love is like a burning tree. You know, so when I went into the playhouse, that was the only sound I knew.
But you changed.
But I changed.
Your voice deepened. But in Detective Story, I mean, you were in Detective Story for what, a year?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge hit.
Yeah,
and then,
huge.
I mean, but then, of course,
and I must say, just about that the set of Detective Story is the base for all Detective Story movies and television shows.
That's right.
That was the thing that allowed that station to be on stage for the first time.
But as I say, it was enormously successful, and nobody wanted you to leave, but you read a play, or you were offered a play. All you need is
one
good break.
All you need is
and you wanted to do that. I mean, you wanted to do it, but you also liked the playwright, right? I mean, Arnie Manoff?
I read the play, and it was by Arnold Manoff, and he was a refugee from Hollywood. He was a blacklisted writer, and he brought along with him John Barry, who was a fantastic director, and also played the lead in All You Need Is One Good Break, and J. Edward Bromberg, who was from the group theater and was an established character actor in Hollywood. And so they brought this play to New York, and I read it, and it was like Odette's to me. I just fell in love with the writing of it, and I left Detective Story to do it. And J. Edward Bromberg was called to testify at the House Un-American Activities Committee. And he had a bad heart, and we were working together, and he said to me, you know, I've testified. Why are they calling me again? I told them they have a bad heart. And I didn't know anything about the House Un-American Activities Committee. This was a whole new concept to me. We'd never read a newspaper in my house except for the sales. And so what is the House Un-American Activities Committee? And then he went to London and he opened a play there with very good reviews, and then he died of a heart attack. And they had a memorial for him at the Edison Hotel in New York. And the people who were organizing it came to me and said, you know, you're a young actress and you acted with Bromberg. Would you like to say something at the memorial? And I said, sure. And
so what did you say?
It was huge, 2,000 people there. Odette spoke at the end. And I said that I felt that his death was due to the hounding that the House Un-American Activities had done. And that was that. It was a little couple of words in the middle of this whole night. And 2 days later, I went to an Actors Equity meeting. And the actor in front of me says, oh, I see you made the list. And I said, what list? And he had Red Channels with him, the book that has all the blacklisted people's names in it. And I was in it, it said Lee Grant, and the words that I had said at Bromberg's memorial.
And so you were blacklisted.
And so from that day, for 12 years, I couldn't work in television or film. I could work on Broadway. There was an agreement between the producers and Actors Equity that there would never be a blacklist on Broadway.
And in the meantime, you also, by that time, you had married Arnold Manoff, or near, it was 1950,
well, after
whatever.
By that time, I had made the movie.
The detective story.
Detective Story, the movie, and been nominated.
Been nominated for an Academy Award and won the
Academy
Cannes
Award.
Film Festival as Best Actress.
And it was after that, when I was 24, it was when I spoke at the memorial and when I was blacklisted.
And there were many phases that you went through in the blacklist. In other words, I mean, first I'm sure you were shocked and stunned, didn't know what to do. And I think you still got work in the theater, but you began to teach, didn't you?
Yes, I went to, Herbert Berghoff had been Sandy's assistant at the neighborhood playhouse. And he had opened an acting studio with Uta Hagen, and I asked if I could teach there. And they said, sure, come on. And so that was the beginning for me of working with other actors who were younger or older than me, and working a lot in improvisations. And it was very exciting.
But you also said, I think in the book, and you've talked to me a little bit about it, about how being blacklisted was kind of an education for you.
The blacklist period, that 12 years,
right,
that went from the time I was 24 to the time I was 36. First of all, it enraged me.
Of course.
And I found my rage in that period because I had lost my acting life, in a sense. I mean, the years for an actor from 24 to 36 are the years that you either make it or you don't. And also, I learned, I was educated about the blacklist, about HUAC, about the government, about the idiocy of what was going on, and the fleeing of our writers overseas, and the inability of our actors to work, and the ones who were blacklisted the most were not the communists, because there weren't that many of them, but all the liberals who had spoken at some, party or given money for the Spanish Civil War,
right.
So that these shots that were coming down from these men who were making a lot of money out of blacklisting actors like me. The advertisers paid them, the CBS and ABC and NBC paid them, they gave them names. Anybody who got up in a meeting at the television union, if they said, I object to this, or why am I being blacklisted, somebody on the board, the president of the union, and all of the board were blacklisters who took down the name and fed them to Vincent Hartnett of Red Channels, the one who wrote the book on it. And unless Kim Hunter was nominated for an Oscar the same year that I was for the Tennessee Williams
For Streetcar Named Desire.
Streetcar Named
the movie.
Desire. And while we kind of ragtag group was fighting the board of AFTRA, Kim sent a message saying that she was on the side of blacklisting and that she hoped that they would accept her apology. Now, this was because she suddenly found she couldn't work anyplace. And she had no affiliations. And so she went to Vincent Hartnett, who was the editor of Red Channels, and she said, you know, I'm told to go to you. Why? You know, what am I? He said, pay me $200 and show up at the meeting and say this. She said, I can't do that. So he said, well, then send a telegram saying that you're in favor of Blacklist. And fortunately, much later on, I had asked, and I know this will be, you know, kind of unfamiliar to you, but there was a radio comedian named John Henry Falk, who was a kind of Texas good old boy. And he had a huge radio audience. And in order to get rid of the AFTRA board and president who were blacklisting all of their actors, Madeline Lee, who was a fiery little radio actor at that time, and I went to John Henry Falk's house and asked him to form a board.
Because you wanted him to be on the board of
I wanted him to form a board to run for AFTRA so we could get rid of the board that was blacklisting everybody. And he said yes. And before I left the door, I said, listen, you know, I'm asking you to do something, but your life is in your hands. I want you to know that it doesn't take much to be blacklisted. It doesn't take much. I have to tell you this because it was never told to me. And he said, I know. My father was a lawyer, and you know, he's for the Constitution, and so am I. And so he formed this slate that ran for office and won. And he had his radio show taken away. He was blacklisted. And in the early 60s, they took his case to court. And he had a great lawyer fighting for him. And he was sued, Vincent Hartnett, and he sued this grocer up in Albany who would put a sign up saying, if you buy Crest, if they were the ones who were advertising it, if you buy Crest, you're supporting a communist. And so it was to get money from this, from Vincent Hartnett and from this grocer up in Albany, and he won. It was like 61. It was like the country was just turning. And he won like, you know, $1 million. Jury came back and said, can we give him $3 million more?
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And yes, but they were broke. And that day, that very day, the grocer died in a motel in New York. He wouldn't show up at the courtroom, but he died.
But all during that time, you continued to be blacklisted yourself, and you were finally called up in front of the House Un-American.
I was.
Twice?
Yes. No, I wasn't called up twice. The first time I was called up, I was in a play, Lo and Behold.
Right.
And you know, the House Un-American Activities Committee was made up of stupid, ignorant men. They said, do you get your jobs from communist agents? You know, they'd connected the word agent with a communist agent. You know, I mean, it was like unbelievable, the questions they asked.
And Lee.
And I was protected. I had Leonard Boudin as my lawyer.
Great lawyer.
Great, wonderful lawyer. And he had me take the fifth, you know, so I could tell them I am not a communist, but I cannot tell you any names of anybody. And I certainly, you know, because they were after my husband, Arnie Manoff. And the last time, when it was, you know, 1962, and Kennedy was president, CBS called the House Un-American Activities Committee and said, can we work now? And they said, not until she names her husband. This was 1962. 1962, when everybody was working.
So finally,
There was a very kind of big deal guy, Max Campbellman in Washington. And it was 1964. He went, the committee guy had asked him for a favor, and he said, I'll do it for you if you take Lee Grant off the blacklist. And he said, okay. So it was like that. Okay.
just like
I
that.
got a little letter that said I was an okay citizen. It was over. Yeah,
Wild.
yeah.
I was going to go back a tiny bit about this play that you were offered, Captains and Kings, that you wanted to do, and because I think it's an interesting story. You wanted to do Captains and Kings, but you thought you didn't look good anymore. Remember, because you were very obsessed with your gorgeous looks, and
I
you
wasn't
wanted to.
obsessed with my gorgeous looks while I was fighting the blacklist.
You weren't.
I wasn't. I had a daughter. She was 2 years old. And we had gone to our summer place with my stepsons, who were about 11 and 12 at that time. And I hadn't been offered a job in 2 years.
That's right.
In the theater, on stage. And Joe Anthony, a friend of mine from the Actors Studio, called and said, I have a play for you. It's called The Captains and the Kings. It's about the atomic submarine. It's about the atomic submarine.
Eddie Rickenbacker.
Rickenbacker, the atomic submarine. What a play. And there's only one woman in it, and it's the 26-year-old ingenue. And I was so excited at being offered that kind of part in a play that was coming to Broadway. And I called my husband, Arnold Manoff, and he said, if you take the play, we're finished.
Why did he say that?
He was working on a job, I guess. We had 3 children
That you were taking care of.
that I was taking care of, and so it would have fallen on him. I don't know all the reasons why, but I looked terrible.
I don't believe
No, it was, all those years, when you don't pay that kind of attention to yourself, and you look, I was in a marriage where Arnie didn't really like me all that much. And to do a job where Joe Anthony said she's the 26-year-old ingenue, I was desperate. And I went to a cosmetic surgeon, and I said, I want a facelift. I want all these things that go down to go up. I want to look happy. I want to look pretty, and I want to look happy. And so he said, how old are you? I said, I'm 30. And he said, have you been going to an analyst? And I said, yeah. He said, have the analyst call me and tell me if this is all right with him for me to do this. And I did, and I talked the analyst into it. I said, I need it. I need it to work. And so I had the facelift done, and it made a huge difference. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see sad, bad. I saw up, pretty, who are you? And I left and went to San Francisco, where we opened the play, and worked across country, came out, and by the time I came in, I thought this was the best play in the world. This submarine thing about Eddie Rickenbacker. My friends, who I had told was the worst play in the world, came backstage and said, you were right, this is really terrible. I said, what do you mean? This is a great play. Because when you're in it, you just love it.
Yeah.
And it closed like in 2 days. But what had happened was that I had gone back on my own. Mm-hmm. I was my own person again, and I was not going to go back into the marriage. I stayed at my friend Gladys Schwartz's apartment, like 4 floors down from my apartment, so I could take Dinah and the boys down there. But my marriage was over, and I knew that I was going to be on my own, and I had to, you know.
And not long after, well, maybe a couple of years later, you met Joey?
Joey Fioretti. I was doing a summer circuit, the summer circuit, and we were doing Ninochka, which was a musical. And so I was playing Ninochka, and there was this kid working out on stage. You know, he was the lead dancer. He was doing the dancing, and he was doing something. He said, I should have stayed a plumber. And that sounded kind of interesting. And so there we go. I had Dinah with me, and so he had his daddy's car, and he drove us around. And by
But he was
the
a
end of it,
totally different kind of person for you. He made you feel good.
He was, you know, a street kid, and a bad boy, and not an intellectual at all. As a matter of fact, he liked Mussolini a lot. And I kept throwing him out of the house because
He kept saying,
we needn't go into all of those things. But he stuck it out, and here we are today, 50 years later.
no. Oh my God, that's great. I just had to get a few words about Joey, because you know everything good happened after the Blacklist for you. It seemed to me,
Yeah.
wonderful things, including Joey.
Yep.
You immediately started working again.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yep.
Was Peyton Place the first, or did the Defenders, or
Well,
TV
the
shows?
best thing was that I met Joe Papp, and I did,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
what's her name?
Electra.
Electra. That a little backlash from HUAC was that when I was finished with the committee, I could not say anybody's name. And I still have that problem.
You lost your.
I lost my ability to say names. So that's why I have Mary Beth with me every place that we go, because I say, hi, I haven't seen you in so long. And she says, Judy. But that was the outcome from the House on American Activities.
But you did do Electra for Joe. He wanted you to do more
I did
stuff.
Electra, and I was back with him to do another season when my agent took Peyton Place.
And that was.
Is that a telephone message?
No,
What is it?
it's questions later on. We're going to
Oh,
go
you
on
mean
for a little
time is
while
running
longer.
out?
Not yet.
Oh, I
not
see.
as far as I'm concerned. I want to finish a couple more things before
Okay.
we go. All right, you've done Peyton Place. You won the Emmy for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you started doing really amazing movies,
Yeah.
some of which we saw up there, like The Landlord.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the great movies, and Lee is fantastic in it.
Yeah.
Who did you kind of emulate? Weren't you inspired by your mother and aunt?
Yes, my mother and my aunt, absolutely. They were thinking of hiring Jessica Tandy for my part.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
And I had done Heat of the Night with Norman Jewison, who was producing this,
One of
and
the
Hal
great-
Ashby
yeah, right.
was directing it. And I said, oh, please, please, please let me read for you. And they said, we're thinking Jessica Tandy. And I said, I know this woman. I know her. Please just let me read. And so they
And you
did,
did.
and so I got it. Yeah.
And what about Shampoo, which is, to me is one of the most amazing performances. I mean, because it's so sexually brutal, really. The scenes, though, I really think it is.
Sexually brutal?
Well, brutal, okay, not brutal physically, but only intellectually, should I say? Or mentally, I mean, psychologically, the scene that Lee, I think, won the Academy Award for, when you come home and you see that Warren Beatty has
And with my
made love to
daughter.
your daughter,
Yeah.
and then you decide that you want to seduce him again. I mean, to me, it's a brutal scene to me.
Well, that's an interesting thing.
Maybe it's too
because
strong a word, but-
in the book, I discuss the fact that Warren had sat me down at a table right before we were to do the scene, and said, "You don't see that I've had sex with Carrie." And I said, what do you mean? He said, women don't see those things.
You saw her right in the room. I mean, she was there.
I said, but I do know. No. This is something I know. And we were to shoot the scene. We were rehearsing and shooting the scene the next day. And I came in I had a raging headache that night, and I came in the next day, and I told him, I'm quitting. I can't work with you if you're going to give me directions. You're the hairdresser, you know. And,
Okay.
You know, and that's all there is to it, because what I knew as Lee through this character was that she came home with her hair in rollers, just, you know, so in heat for him that it didn't make any difference who he'd been with. You know, that she came in, she saw that it happened, but she just hoped they had enough left.
Okay, yeah.
You know, so there was no question about that from the time that she walked into that place. So I mean, that was the way I saw Felicia.
Ah, okay.
And so he said, of course, anything you want, you know. I won't tell you what to do anymore. And so it was just great from then on.
And then after, well, there are many other things that we can talk about, but I still would like to talk a little bit about your directing, because I love to hear about how you decided, you know, why you decided to become a director, and you were sort of reinventing yourself again, very successfully.
I felt, you know, I was very obsessed with my age at the time, because I was coming to Hollywood at 36 and playing girls of 26, thank God for the facelift. And I knew that my time as a Hollywood actress working in films and television was limited as far as my age was concerned. And so when I finally got the Oscar for Shampoo, I had a feeling as I walked up that aisle that, you know, that I better jump to another rock, that this life, this wonderful, wonderful period was coming to an end, and I had to reinvent myself. And the AFI had a women's directing workshop, and they asked me to join it. And it was really exciting, and it was something I could obsess about. And so that started really a whole new interest, obsession, and being able to do documentaries, you know, to go from not being able to say anything to politically speak
they were very
your mind
all
through
statements.
film,
Yes, exactly.
you know, was just so freeing.
Do you have a favorite documentary? I love your documentaries. I think they're all superb.
Well, in the last one, the one that we did in Texas about women who had
on
their
trial?
children,
Oh, no.
yeah, women in trial who had their children taken away from them.
Yeah.
We only were allowed to show it once, and we got a lawsuit on us for like millions and millions of dollars. And so that has never really been seen. And the baby that hasn't been seen is the one that you wish could.
And now you're writing books. How do you feel about that? Do you like writing?
You know,
What did you
this
find?
has a kind of an air of unreality about it.
Why?
Where am I? 92nd Street, why? You know, wait a minute. You know, I was just in front of my desk, you know, like writing with my pen. I wrote everything in longhand. And how did this happen? Well, I went to Letty Pogrup and I showed her what I'd written, and she said, I'm sending this to my agents. And suddenly it went from my desk, and
Really?
this isn't that long ago, this is, you know, a couple of months ago, to David, what is it, Becky? What's the name?
David Rosenthal?
No. David
Kuhn. Oh, David Kuhn, your agent.
Kuhn,
Sure.
who
Sorry.
sent it to David Rosenthal, and suddenly it's a book, and it was a book I wrote for myself because I felt I was, you know, the thing about the names, I've suspected that it may be the onset of some, you know, disease where I was losing my memory, and so having all the memories at hand was the most reassuring thing. It was why I wrote the book.
But don't you think writing is a kind of performing as well? Don't you feel you're able to play everything, you're able to recreate all sorts of scenes. Don't you find that part of writing?
Yes. Well, you go back.
Yeah.
You know, you're there. And the thing that I wanted to say about Anything Your Little Heart Desires, which is your book. It's something that I read. I haven't read a book in 4 years because everybody is so much better than me, and it would stop me from writing. But I read your book just in the last 2 weeks, and I just couldn't put it down. I couldn't put it down. It was so extraordinary that you speak through your childhood to an adoring father, this Irish father, and the story of his descent, because he defended the Hollywood 10, the 19 at that time, and his being blacklisted himself. And the odd thing was that he defended Eddie Dmytryk, who was one of the Hollywood writers who went to jail with Ring Lardner. And Eddie Dmytryk says, you know, let me out of jail, I will name names. And one of the names he named was Arnold Manoff, my husband. So I mean, the ring that goes around and you know, that ties people who lived through that time together, because that's how you lost your father. He committed suicide.
Yes, it's true. But now I wanted to find out if you're going to write another book. And you maybe have a title for it?
Oh, yes. The title is, wait, there's something I forgot to tell you.
I guess on that note, we're going to now take questions, or I'm going to read the questions, and you'll... This is for you, Lee. What was it like directing documentaries? How did you come to do that kind of work?
Well, actually, the first documentary came through Mary Beth Yarrow, and it was her hometown. It was Wilmer, Minnesota, where these 8 women went on strike against the bank because they were asked to, they hired young boys and asked them to train these boys, and then the boys were elevated to be their bosses. And when the women went to the president of the bank and said, you know, why can't we do that job? He said, but you're women. And so we went down and made that documentary. And that was the first.
Okay.
And we made that into a movie of the week. All of the documentaries that I made 4, I think, into movies of the week, which at that time got an audience of 40 million because it was just the 3 networks. So the things that I cared about, we were able to transfer into a media that, you know, drew in many people.
Like the movie you did with Marlo Thomas, was that one of them?
Marlo Thomas, yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Another question, who are some of your favorite actors and actresses who are working now?
Well, I love the Kates, Kate Blanchett, Kate Winslet, Blanchett and Winslet. I think they're great. Annette Bening, I think, is like superb in everything that she does. Of course, Meryl. I mean, many, many, many good actors. Vanessa Redgrave, I have always adored all my life.
And male actors?
I don't know. Lots of them. Yeah, lots of them. They're good.
Okay. This says, love the book, congratulations. How do you manage work life and living with Joey, who is also your producer?
Yes.
In your documentaries and your movies.
Who wrote that?
I don't know.
Some friend.
Okay. You're not going to answer?
Oh, well, I managed to write and live with Joey because he has a new obsession, which is that he's an artist and he's been drawing and painting for the last 3 years, and so he's off my back, and he's doing just beautiful, beautiful work.
Okay, and the next question is, do you have a favorite anecdote from Valley of the Dolls, please?
Valley of the Dolls. Well, you know, Valley of the Dolls was this Jacqueline Suzanne novel. This, you know, really, really, you know, what do you call those novels, Patty?
Potboilers?
Potboilers.
No, bestsellers also.
Best-selling potboiler of its day. And you know, I had just finished, I guess, Heat of the Night or one of the, and this was, you know, 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, you know, get the cash. And the thing was that Sharon Tate was in it with me, and she was the only one I had my scenes with, actually, because she was married to my brother, who I knew was going to go crazy and end up in an institution. And so it was a chance, as always in all the films, bad or good, that you connect with other actors in a very familial way that you never can in any other way, because working brings you so close together. So it was a chance for me to know her.
And then the second part is, how is your daughter Dinah? I love her, this person says.
Daughter Dinah she's my spiritual guide, and she lives on Bainbridge Island in Washington, the state of Washington. And she has a group of actors that she works with. And last summer, she asked me to do the gin game with another actor from Bainbridge Island, because I spend summer with her. And it was, you know, a very funny kind of crossover, because I directed her, and now she was going to direct me and this guy. And, you know, she's a very strong lady. And, you know, I had a few misgivings about how this was going to work out. And then I heard her directing the guy, and I thought she was just great. And I said, you know, you can give me some of those notes if you want. And it was lovely. And she's a great mom and a great daughter.
Okay. And this is another 2-part question. Since your book is called I Said Yes to Everything, did you ever reluctantly accept a role that turned out to be something that you were really proud of?
Did I ever reluctant?
Did you actually.
Did I ever reluctantly, that I ended up being...
That you really liked it, liked what you
when I
accepted it, I guess?
No.
And did you ever, are there any parts you accepted that you really regretted?
No.
Okay. And what film, not yours, made the biggest impact in your life?
Well, what was that Kazan film? A Voice in the Crowd?
Face in the Crowd.
Face in the Crowd. A Face in the Crowd. Yeah.
The Kazan movie.
The Kazan movie.
Interesting. I love that movie. It's a good movie.
Telephone. And the idea that Kazan could have not only given names, but exhorted everybody else to give names, and yet made the most socially connected films that anybody ever made during the Blacklist years.
True.
And A Face in the Crowd, showing how, you know, a McCarthy kind of guy who, you know, who could sing and get the crowds around him, but who was a villain of the first water, could make it to presidency, was something that I felt was a great gift that he gave to the American people. I felt that could happen anytime.
Well, it was a very prescient film. It was also
What?
about, it was a prescient film. It was about the incipient power of television, I think, because
Yes,
he was
that's
on
right.
television. He was a
That's
television
right.
hero or idol. But another one. Let's see. Is there another one? Yeah. You said you were spoiled. In what way were you spoiled?
Well, I didn't know how spoiled I was until I became the stepmother to 2 little boys, and I had to run downstairs on the floor below me to ask the lady there how to make pasta, you know, how to boil it and how to, you know, make the gravy. I'd never cooked anything. I had never washed a dish because my mother would throw herself in front of the sink before she would allow me to put my hands in dishwater. And I'd never made a bed, except in camp where you made your own cots, you know. And I once had her tell me to drop my clothes on the floor so that the maid could pick it up. So the difference between the home life and what I was raised to be and the actual life that happened when I left mother and father and went to Arnie's house was big.
Did he think you were spoiled, do you think?
I was spoiled. I still am.
Okay. And then this, I guess no. What is your relationship to Judaism and Israel?
Oh, my dear,
Oops.
my dears, did you hear news?
Yes, I did.
This before we came here out today, you know, the war. I mean, this war with all the rockets coming into Israel and all of the droppings of bombs on the Palestinians. You know, it's just, you just say, please. I lit a candle last night. I did. I just am so frightened for Israel, and I'm frightened for the Palestinian families, and I don't know what will stop it. I mean, the Blacklist is nothing compared to what's happening today.
It's terrible. It is terrible.
This is a very frightening time that we're leaving for our grandchildren.
Would you like to, you wish you could do a movie about it? Would you like to do a documentary about something like that?
No.
No? No?
No. It's too hard. And it's going on and on and on. And you fear for everyone. You know, it's just, what do you think about it? What are your thoughts about it?
Well,
Whoever wrote this question.
I think, I think we could get into a long discussion about this. It's a very, it's a very serious subject, but I think we're also supposed to end this soon and maybe have the lights go up and Lee can sign some books. And thank you very much, Lee.